ex-Muslims. Probably some of the most interesting people you'll ever find on the internet. But let me preface this by saying there's two types of ex-Muslims. You've got those like secular spirit who, while I disagree with their takes, maintain respectful dialogue and avoid demeaning criticism of Islam. Well, for the most part. Then you've got the other kind. Those who will use any argument, no matter how absurd, in order to demonize Islam and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today we're looking at one of those channels, CIRA International, starring Al-Fadi. Right, so who is Al-Fadi? Former Salafi Muslim from Saudi Arabia and the founder of CIRA International, the Center for Islamic Research and Awareness. He is a researcher, editor, writer, and translator for numerous ministries, including Answering Islam? Wait, that kind of sounds familiar. Oh, right. It's that website notorious for spreading misinformation about Islam. Well, hopefully his content doesn't do the same, right? Alright, let's check out some of his popular videos so we can find something to refute. Allah is Satan. Muhammad's real name is Kutham. Okay. Okay, so he's making a lot of claims. We should probably track this. Okay, I have an idea. So we're gonna have this reference sentence. A basic overview of Islam. Islam is a belief in one God, Allah, with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is a Muslim, as his final messenger. The Quran as his guidance, and Mecca as its holiest city. So Allah is Satan. Muhammad's real name is Kutham. Did Muhammad even exist? Do you mean Kutham? Islam and Mecca are fabricated. This is getting kind of confusing pretty quick. There is no Muhammad? What? I guess it's confirmed now. Muhammad was a Christian. Okay. Muhammad copied from the Jews. Rocks, Muhammad is the real god of Islam. Mecca is the lie. Aisha and Fatima are Jewish. Is the original Mecca. Created the Quran. Mecca in Yemen? Muhammad is Jesus. Okay. Wait, Muhammad is Jewish? Didn't you say a second ago that he was Christian? Okay, but in all seriousness, whenever I get upset about something, like maybe I read something awful in the news, I look at his popular videos and just have a little bit of a giggle. I mean, look at the sentence we made earlier and what happened to it. Islam is the belief in Allah, who is Satan, with Prophet Kutham, who didn't exist, who was Christian. Wait, actually, he was Jewish. Wait, didn't he say he was God? Yeah, anyways. As this final messenger, the Quran, not from God, but from Abdul Malik, as its guidance, and Petra, or maybe Yemen, as its imaginary holiest city, while Muhammad is actually Jesus. I mean, this is more confusing than the movie Inception. Is Al-Fadi okay? Alright, so I just realized we need to actually find a video to refute, but they're also captivating, so okay, I guess we can see if Muhammad was actually Christian.
This is Al-Fadi. With me here in studio is Dr. J. Smith. And today, Dr. J, we are going to ask this question. What do we do with this 7th century Muhammad then?
No. Wait a minute. Is that who I think it is?
Give me one early church father that talked about the Trinity as you believe it today.
Let me give you some names. Ignatius, Tertullian. He was the one that coined the name of the Trinity. But what about Clement? What about Polycarp? What about Athanasius? These were all early church fathers. Every one of them believed in the Trinity.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks! And this material that I'm going to be introducing now is not my material. Have you noticed none of this is my material? Some of it is mine, but this is really coming from Mel from Sneakers Corner. Mel from Sneakers Corner actually dropped into this.
Sneakers Corner? Is this where like I trade my Jordans or something?
These guys are researching all the time. And they're saying, hold on a minute, why the name Muhammad, the Blessed One? Unless, of course, there might be someone that this is referring to. Could there be someone named Muhammad in the 7th century that they're redacting their Muhammad back onto? Or did actually existed in, like, say, the writings of Sabaeus, those who are outside, because they are referring to someone named Muhammad.
Non-Muslim writers of the 1st century AH attest that it was strictly monotheistic, Sabaeus, and iconoclastic, meaning you reject images of holy figures. That its adherents had a sanctuary, their house of God, called the Kaaba, towards which they prayed, and also that they followed Muhammad, Thomas the Presbyter, Sabaeus, chronicler of Khuzestan, who was their guide and instructor, whose tradition and laws they fiercely upheld, and who prescribed for them abstinence from carrion, wine, falsehood, and fornication. Sabaeus. It is also noted that the Muslims held Jerusalem in honor, were hostile to the cross, denied that Christ was the Son of God, and conducted their worship in specific places bearing the name Masjid. This is the book Seeing Islam as Others Saw It by Robert G. Hoyland on page 549. So non-Muslim sources like Sabaeus clearly describe Muhammad like the historical hadith we have, but keep this description in mind.
And lo and behold, we do know someone named Muhammad. This was his nickname, and he did live in the 7th century. So let's go to the slide, and let's see what this guy is. Well, his name is right there on the slide, Ilyas ibn Qabisa of Tayaye. Now, it could be Ilyas or Iyas. Both are correct, because I don't want people yelling all over me, oh, you can misspell it. No, it's both are correct. However, remember what the traditions from the 9th and 10th century tell us, is that Muhammad lived in the Hijaz, and that he invaded the Byzantines and the Persians, which were further north, so he was significant. Yet there's nothing written about him from that time. time.
Like that quote I just mentioned from earlier, we have multiple sources confirming who the Prophet Muhammad was, and that, in fact, he definitely existed. Now, earlier I was quoting Hoyland, however, I found a translation of the original primary source speaking of the same thing. In page 95 of the Armenian history attributed to Cebeos, we read, "At that time a certain man from among those same sons of Ishmael, whose name was Mahmet, a merchant, as if God's command appeared to them as a preacher in the path of truth. He taught them to recognize the God of Abraham, especially because he was learned and informed of the history of Moses." Now, I don't know why he mentioned Cebeos when it takes little effort to find out what he actually said. Keep in mind, he's a non-Muslim from around 660, and he's basically confirming the Islamic tradition.
At the time of his death, the area that he conquered in Hijaz was really very
Minuscule.
small, right? Very
Minuscule.
small. Yet you hear about him going all the way to fight Caesar, right? And you're saying, why in the world would he go all the way across hostile territories to go and fight another empire and ignore the rest of the Arabian Peninsula?
So Muhammad conquered half of the Arabian Peninsula in about 23 years. Doesn't that sound pretty remarkable with somebody with no previous military leadership? By the way, he didn't attempt to conquer the Byzantines. Instead, he previously sent letters, once to the king Heraclius, and the only provocation ever done was when Al-Ghazani, a close ally of Heraclius, killed the messenger sent by the Prophet ﷺ. So he wasn't trying to fight Caesar Heraclius. And if you look at a physical map of the Arabian Peninsula, you can see that Hijaz was in a desert surrounded by mountains. It would have been in vain to go east with more deserts and with no major civilizations until the coastlines. You guys would make really bad military leaders if you just sent all of your soldiers across 500 kilometers of pure desert for no reason.
The traditions, remember, as I said, are from the 9th and 10th century. When you redact back on somebody who is 200 to 300 years earlier, you can pretty much say anything you want unless you know the history, unless you're looking at the topography. In the 9th and 10th century, that would make sense.
The hadith were not fabricated from the 9th and 10th centuries. We actually have books predating Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, like the Sahifa of Hammam ibn Bunabi, which is dated 719 or 748 AD. We also have Shami of Mahmar ibn Rashid from 770, and the Muwatta of Imam Malik, written around 767. So the reason why we rely on Bukhari and Muslim is that they were the first to compile hadith using the strictest authentication criteria, ensuring that only Sahih, authentic hadith were recorded. But Imam Bukhari actually went above and beyond and added the strict condition that required proof that the narrators physically met their teachers, in addition to living in the same time period. And as a cherry on top, in the 1st century, these following books of hadith were compiled by the students of the Prophet Muhammad's companions.
So here we have this Ilyas ibn al-Qabisa of Tayaya. Tayaya means allotment. So what we need to look and say, we need to find a man, and here we find out that this man is named Muhammad. That is his nickname. Ilyas ibn Qabisa of Tayaya is a place he comes from, is nothing more than his formal name. Well, we know that in 618, the Saracens, and these are the Arabs, these include mostly Christians. Nothing Muslim about them. They took Syria, Arabia, and Mesopotamia, and they selected a king in 622. Turns out he is a Lakhmid king who rebelled and was kicked out of his city and then reconquered it. So we need to look to someone who was a Lakhmid king, which is a Christian kingdom. Look at the red rectangle. That's the Lakhmid area. Notice that is where Iraq is today. So hundreds of miles north. This is not in the Hijaz.
So now he's saying the title of Muhammad goes to Ilyas, who ruled the Lakhmid kingdom opposite of the Hijaz region. I don't really understand what source he's using to confirm this. It just kind of sounds like a baseless theory.
And then he conquered that city, and then he reconquered it again. And where did he come from? He came from that city that I just put up there, Hira. Today, that's called Kufa.
Okay, let's stop here for a second.
Go ahead.
What was the name of the cave where Muhammad encountered?
cave.
There you go. You see, I'm telling people, look at these data. Coincidence?
How is he comparing a small cave that's confirmed to be in Mecca and a city in Iraq? If you've ever read the story of Muhammad's first revelation, it makes no sense if this theory is actually true.
Well, here's another coincidence. Look at Al-Bukhari in 870. He refers to and he says that Muhammad is also known as Ibn Abi Qabsha.
That's right. Many people, by the way, don't know that Muhammad is not the real name of Muhammad. There is another name for him.
Ibn Abi Qabsha. Look how close that is to Ilya ibn Qabisa. So even Al-Bukhari knows this in the 9th century. He just didn't know where this guy was.
It's kind of wild people can't even have similar names anymore. But hold up. Ibn Abi Qabsha wasn't even Muhammad's name. And when comparing these names, only about 3 syllables are kind of similar. And the only person ever to give him that title was Abu Sufyan in only 2 hadiths. You see, back when Abu Sufyan was the leader of the pagans, and right after he delegated on behalf for Muhammad ﷺ, he referred to Muhammad ﷺ as Ibn Abi Qabsha. So everyone else, including his enemies, decided to abandon the name Ibn Abi Qabsha except Abu Sufyan. In fact, we have other hadith narrated by Abu Sufyan who referred to the Prophet as Muhammad, so it was likely he was just being condescending with the name Ibn Abi Kabsha. And of course, if you want to know Muhammad's actual names, check out Sahih Muslim 2354b. By the way, none of them are Ibn Abi Kabsha or Ilyas ibn Kabisa.
That's right.
So there is some historical
Again, I asked the
foundation for
question.
it. But
Coincidences?
this is not in Mecca and Medina. This is all happening up in Hira, way up north.
Now, can we collaborate this version now? Are there data to support it? I mean, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here.
This is all coming out of the Sassanid documents. This is all coming out of the historians of that time. That's why Mel was able to look up it and find it and say, listen, this is the Muhammad we're looking for.
Did Dr. Hoyland ever mention anything about
Hoyland
it?
doesn't say that he didn't interpret it, and he could not, and he didn't understand this part of it. And that's why we're saying, listen, Hoyland, thank you for giving us the documents. Now let's interpret it and let's see what's happening. What's fascinating, you see these parallels between this Muhammad and the later Muhammad.
So he basically confirmed this is a layman's theory at best. I don't even know why he posted this. I mean, you think these two scholars would at least add some references and quotations if they honestly believed that this would flip the Islamic narrative on its head.
If Muhammad was a prophet from God, why did he keep idols in his house? But what if we prove to you that the very man that Allah picked for himself to fight idolatry used to have idols?
Wait, so is this referring to the Christian Muhammad Ilyas or the fake Muslim Muhammad? Because it sounds like he's calling Christians idolaters.
With that in mind, I want to turn our attention now to our dear brother. Brother Rob, welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me again. The topic again is Muhammad keeping idols inside of his house. If we look at chapter 74, Al-Muddathir, chronological order is that this chapter is the fourth chapter supposedly that Muhammad received from Allah. And the $1 million question is, why in the fourth chapter Allah needs to remind Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, stop worshipping idols? Should it not Muhammad understood from the very first chapter already that he should never ever worship idols?
The first chapter revealed was CIRA Al-Alaq, chapter 96, verse 1 through 5. Now, where does Allah tell Muhammad to shun idols? Now, I know Rob and Al-Fadi think Muhammad is above Allah, but a human being can't read minds, especially the infinite mind of Allah.
And here's the proof. Ya ayyuhal muddathir, oh the cloaked one. Many Muslims confuse this chapter that it's about them. No, it's about Muhammad. And this translator was nice enough to put the name of Muhammad as you see here. So Allah says to Muhammad, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, fa'undir, rise up and warn, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahhir, and keep your clothes clean. And the last ayah, rujsa fahjur, and Allah saying to Muhammad, and stay away from idols.
Okay, so verse 5 is the first instance of Allah telling Muhammad to shun idols. The first wahi, aka Revelation 96, 1 through 5, commands him to read. The second, chapter 68, was in defense of the Prophet Muhammad and against those who called him crazy. The third, chapter 73, was a command by Allah telling Muhammad to pray during the night. And the fourth, chapter 74, this chapter told him to shun idolatry whilst warning judgment in hellfire. While this verse addresses Muhammad directly, it's important to understand that the Quran is meant to be a timeless guidance for all of humanity. So when Allah commands Muhammad to shun idols, he's not just correcting a specific behavior, he's establishing a universal principle for all Muslims to follow. This is why the verse appears so early in Revelation. It's setting a foundational rule for the entire religion, not exposing Muhammad as an idol worshipper.
Now, if we go to any tafsir, let's say we go to the crème de la crème himself, Al-Tabari, look, Tafsir Al-Tabari for the same chapter, what does Ar-Rujsa Fahjur? معنى الكلام, meaning the meaning of the verse or the meaning of the words. وَالْأَوْثَانِ فَهْجُرْ عِبَادَتِهَا وَاتْرُكْ خِدْمَتِهَا, meaning, and Ya Muhammad, as we showed you, stop worshipping idols, Ya Muhammad, and abandon their service.
And that's
so
very
why
damaging.
in the
That's
and why
very damaging, brother. He is still serving idols.
Allah needs to warn Muhammad, why are you being a mushrik? Well, I already sent you down the Quran.
Yo, what are they talking about? How does that equate to him committing shirk? Bukhari 4926 details the scenario of this revelation and dictates that Ar-Rujuz means idols. Now I don't speak Arabic, but if we pull up all translations of 74.5 on Quran.com and replace Ar-Rujuz with idols, none of them give any sort of hint that Muhammad used to worship idols. This was his first verse showing idolatry, worshipping idols, was prohibited. Now in the previous chapter, chronologically, in verse 9, it is clear that Allah is the only God. However, since Allah is telling Muhammad to avoid and shun idols, wouldn't that already be clear? Not necessarily. In Tafsir Ibn Kathir 39:3, the pagans would make idols in the images of angels and worship them so they can intercede on their behalf. So 73:9 was telling us that God was the only God, and 74:5 was telling us not to practice idolatry.
Here is a book by the Imam Abu Hanifa, one of the founders of the four madhabs, in Musnad al-Imam al-Azim by Imam Abu Hanifa. We can see on page 589 the following damaging hadith.
The word that is underlined here, reported from Abu Hanifa, basically, and it says, there was a curtain, basically, a curtain wall in the house of the Prophet of Allah, which there was in it statues, meaning idols on it. Jibreel stayed away, meaning slowed down on coming down to Muhammad and giving him revelations. Then after that, he came back and said to Muhammad, why did you slow down? What made you stay away from me? Not bring in revelations, technically. Here is the second line that has an underline. We do not enter a house that has a dog and also have statues in it. So if you're a dog lover out there, I'm sorry, Gabriel is not going to enter your house. Good for you.
So before we look into this hadith, I want to point something out. Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari both mention angels avoiding houses with images, but their versions are significantly different. They speak about angels in general, not specifically Jibreel. They don't single out Muhammad ﷺ's house, and most importantly, they never mention anything about idols, just images. And to top it all off, it's confirmed to be authentic. Now, on the other hand, this hadith by Abu Hanifa has many problems. Despite being a great leader in Islamic jurisprudence, he has also been criticized for his weakness in hadith. For example, Imam Muslim, the compiler of Sahih Muslim, the second most authentic collection of hadith, critiques him in Al-Qunna wal As-Samah. In page 276, it quotes Abu Hanifa, he is a person of reason who contradicts hadith. He does not have many authentic hadith. By the way, this is from Imam Muslim, not me. So in this case, this hadith also contradicts authentic reports, which makes the report munkar. We can say this because we have other authentic reports, like Bukhari 2478, that explicitly show hatred against the idols worshipped in the Kaaba. It simply wouldn't make sense if this was the case.
Why would the final prophet, after receiving so many chapters and so many ayahs and verses in the Quran, still he is keeping statues, idols, images inside his house? This is damaging. And Muslims dare to say, well, Muhammad never committed shirk. I think, brother, I think that Muhammad loved fine art.
So he's clearly lying, and by their own admission, this was the fourth chapter to be revealed to Muhammad. He did not receive so many chapters yet. He's really just trying to anger you and insert this kind of bias into your head.
Here is another hadith. This is Sunan Abi Dawud, hadith number 4158. We can read, narrated Abu Huraira, the messenger of Allah said, Jibreel came to me and said, I came to you last night and was prevented from entering the house simply because there were images at the door. And the word again in the Arabic is tamathil. So Muhammad used to keep tamathil, images or statues, at the door, for there was a decorated curtain with images on it also inside the house.
So there's actually nothing wrong with this hadith, and I'll prove this to you by explaining the differences between images and idols. Images in this case are artistic depictions of living beings, whereas idols are images that are worshipped. And we know it's strictly an image because if it was an idol, he'd either be repenting to Allah for having worshipping them in the first place, or he'd be upset that he had to get rid of them and stop benefiting from their intercession. It was likely a decoration because they were at his door. It could have been something like a welcome mat. The others were a curtain, and the only image he had to cut was a tree, not even anything animal or humanoid. Jibreel abstained because the Prophet had images, and as the role model for mankind, he should go above and beyond. But this only meant missing extra blessings, not committing a sin. In fact, this hadith shows us that having images was a mistake, not a sin. It only prevented extra blessings, aka the angels visiting, and when informed, Muhammad immediately removed them to allow Jibreel to enter. And by the way, there is no mention of repentance or regret about losing idols, just a simple correction. So this is the behavior of someone concerned with achieving the highest level in heaven, not somebody secretly worshipping idols. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. Whenever you watch apologists like these, they'll try to trick you with hadith. They'll pull up weak hadith with something that potentially contradicts Islam, and by focusing on the problematic part, it inserts bias into your head. Then they pull up a similar, authentic hadith, but instead, it's missing the problematic parts. But because these guys are very good at brainwashing, your preconceived bias fills in the gap, adding back the earlier problem that was only said in the weak hadith. And boom, they just gaslit you to think the authentic hadith has error. This is exactly what Al-Fadi and Rob did today. First, he showed us Abu Hanifa's weak hadith about idols, then immediately followed up with the authentic hadith about images. So he's basically counting on you to mix up the two, hoping you'll insert idols where the authentic hadith only mentions images. If the hadith from Abu Hanifa was strong enough to stand on its own, then he wouldn't have inserted the contradicting Sahih hadith later. Al-Fadi claims to be a researcher and translator for Islamic texts, yet here he is, either deliberately misinterpreting hadith or showing complete ignorance of basic hadith authentication. Either way, he's proved himself unreliable when it comes to Islamic knowledge. And as the Prophet ﷺ warned us, Indeed, Shaitan runs through the human being like the running of blood. So the next time you see one of these ex-Muslim scholars making wild claims about Islam, remember, they're not here to educate you, they're here to confuse you. By the way, I just made a Discord, so if you want to join, just click the link in the description below, and I'll see you inshallah.